Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another quick, small, brief edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel and St. Patrick here, and with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagilendran. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, Mash, good to be back. It sort of feels like we've been in hibernation, for the past few months. Obviously, there has been cricket going on, Super 50, CPL. But in terms of like West Indies senior men's cricket, since August in India, we haven't played any cricket. So it feels like the beginning of a journey now. We've got what we're going to talk about on this episode, West Indies A-team tour of South Africa, followed by England touring in December, and then the big away tour in Australia in January. So it seems like this is the start of the beginning of, a long period of red ball, white ball cricket for the senior men's side. But we're here, as you said, Mash, quick episode to focus on the West Indies A-team tour of South Africa, a 3-test series starting. We're recording this on Monday evening, so starting within the next few hours, it'll be tomorrow morning. So we're just here to quickly dissect the squad and sort of all that news around that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, as you say, the tour is critical, I guess, in more than one way. In the immediate sense, it's critical because obviously our next test assignment is Australia away again. The ODI World Cup holders now, no less. And then after that, our next test assignment is England away. So we couldn't ask for, beyond including injury in that, you couldn't ask for two successive series in terms of level of difficulty worse than those two. And we don't have a significant amount of red ball cricket to help prepare the players for those particular series. But what's quite interesting, Santokie, is that when I'm going to name the squad now, but what's quite interesting is, in spite of that, the squad that was named wasn't necessarily, given the kind of context of, Australia coming up, what red ball cricket are people going to get as preparation? We've only had Super 50, etc. It's not as experienced a squad as you would imagine. But before you get into it and chop it up, let me just read out the chosen names for the A-team tour. We have Joshua Da Silva, captain; Tevin Imlach, vice-captain; Kevlin Anderson; Tay Shandapal; Kavem Hodge; Akeem Jordan; Shamar Joseph; Sherman Lewis; Jair McAllister; Zachary McCaskey; Kirk McKenzie; Abhijay Mansingh; Jaden Seals; and Kevin Sinclair. Most notably in terms of the backroom staff, of course, Andre Coley, as is his remit within the red ball job that he's got, will be overseeing the team. Jimmy Adams comes back as an assistant coach, and Sean Tate, the former Aussie Quick, will be an assistant coach as well in terms of prepping the squad. And just for those who don't know, the games. So the first unofficial test is the 21st to the 24th of November at Willowmore Park. The next one is the 28th of November to the 1st of December at Buffalo Park, East London. And the final one is the 5th to the 8th of December at the Mangoan Oval in Bloemfontein. So we got 3 matches in total. First, what's your first reflections and thoughts on it, Santokie?
Yeah, I think generally it's a good core of a squad. That successful A-team tour of Bangladesh in May. It's essentially kept the spine of that. Obviously, with the white ball series coming up, there's a few notable absentees. So off the top of my head, I would imagine Brandon King, Afanase, Casey Carty, who all took part in the A-team tour of Bangladesh. I'd imagine they'll be taking part in the white ball series in England, hence their exclusion. But you raise a very good point, Mash. In terms of experience, it's probably lighter than a lot of people would have imagined. And it just opens up the debate in terms of the remit for A-team cricket. So Cricket West Indies here obviously looking in terms of a longer-term vision, like building that youth and getting them used to playing red ball cricket against high-level opposition. Because let's not forget South Africa's A-team side, which they've named, has about 8 or 9, I believe, players with test experience. So it's going to be a big, big challenge for our A-team squad. On the flip side, you could argue, with the scarcity of red ball cricket our players face, should we have gone for more experience? Likes of a Craig Brathwaite, Jermaine Blackwood, do you put them in? Sort of firstly, Mash, where's your standing on the A-team tour? Do you think this has been the right approach by Cricket West Indies to go with this sort of philosophy and naming the squad?
It's 50-50, isn't it? Because on one hand, I get it. You've at some point, we can't have our cake and eat it. We can't say where are the youth on one hand, and then on the other hand say why are we bringing a bunch of where's the experience, so to speak, right? So if we go back to that squad ever so briefly, I get it. It's good to expose Kurt McKenzie, who only just made his debut in the last Test match we played, which was against India. He made 32 in a duck, right? It's good to expose him to South African conditions. It's good to expose a Kevlon Anderson, a Tej Chanderpaul to South African conditions. It's not something they'll be have experienced significantly before. Obviously, South Africa takes pace. So, South Africa has a lot of bouncy tracks. So it's good to expose a Jair McAllister in overseas conditions and see what his conditioning is like. Similarly, Sherman Lewis. I mean, Shamar Joseph is, you could argue, a left field decision. He's only really just broken into the Guyana Harpy Eagles squad. I know there's a lot of people in Guyana who see significant raw potential in Shamar Joseph. He's obviously one of the quickest in the region. So again, I kind of get it. So on one hand, yes, I understand Santokie. But if we then get to the Australia, and this is my biggest issue, if we then get to the Australia Test Series, and these names are in the squad for the Australia Test Series. So let me just call some names. Craig Brathwaite, Jermaine Blackwood, Raymond Reefer, Kyle Mayers, etc. Now, of course, some of those people will be involved in the white ball series versus England. So it's not as easy to just say where are all these players. But Jermaine Blackwood won't be in the white ball series versus England. Craig Brathwaite won't be in the white ball series versus England. That's just two names immediately, right? So Kumar Roach won't be in the white ball series versus England. That's three names you would expect to see probably travel to Australia. I'm not saying they must go to South Africa per se, Santokie, but then Jermaine Blackwood's, I think, is the obvious point to use. If he plays and he keeps his spot in Australia based on experience, what preparation did Jermaine Blackwood get for Australia other than he's played there before?
Yeah, exactly. So I get it. It's 50-50, like you said, Mash. So is the rationale with Cricket West Indies and the selectors, look, we got to build towards the long term. Australia is a short term target, but we took licks there last year. Nothing's going to dramatically improve by Jermaine Blackwood playing in South Africa on this A-team tour. Have they just cut their losses and just thought, you know what, let's go with players who, you know, we feel can fill the West Indies side for the next 5-6 years, okay? So that could be one way of thinking. But on the other side, like you said, Mash, it does seem a bit foolhardy considering we won't be touring Australia for a long, long time after this to sort of miss out players who could use with it. Experienced players who haven't got that sort of refresher in terms of red ball cricket, haven't played it recently, like a Blackwood and a Brathwaite. And it's even more puzzling when you think Craig Brathwaite played the Super 50. So it's like our test captain would have had more experience of playing white ball 50 over cricket leading into an Australia tour than he would have playing red ball cricket, especially Craig Brathwaite, who's essentially a red ball specialist. So that in itself is confusing. But I think it's a tricky dilemma, and obviously I understand why Cricket West Indies have gone down this route. They're obviously building towards long term, but nonetheless, it is still a strong side with a lot of potential. I'm excited to see Tej Chanderpaul and Kirk McKenzie build upon their decent starts to their test careers and sort of get that experience. I know Tej obviously played earlier this year in South Africa, but to get more experience on South African pitches against quality sides. And Kirk McKenzie, I think obviously he's going to play in Australia, no doubt about it, in that first test. So this experience will be massively beneficial for him. So in terms of that, I do see obviously there are benefits. Although there are question marks about the experienced players, overall, I do feel like it's a positive side. You know, it's got a lot of youth that will benefit a lot from this tour.
So let me put this to you then. What do we do? And before anyone who's listening to this says, Mash, you're always coming with these type of questions. But hear me out. Kurt McKenzie got into the West Indies test squad off the back of some good scores in the Headley Week series. I think it was a double ton or whatever he got. Then he got some scores in the A-Tour series in Bangladesh, or was it here? I can't remember if it was in the Caribbean, if it was in Bangladesh. But either way, he got some good scores in that series as well, right? Cool. Let's say now, Kevlon Anderson Let's say in those 3 unofficial test matches, Santokie, Kevlon Anderson tons up in 2 of the 3 matches. Let me call another name. Let's say Shamar Joseph takes 2 or more fifers in the course of those test matches. Let's say Kavem Hodge scores 3 centuries in a row on this 18 tour. What is it too simplistic to say, well, they're the ones with the most recent Red Bull experience. They've scored heavily, so into the test squad to Australia they go. And I don't know at whose expense, but similar to what we kind of said about Super 50, if you don't pick the people who best perform in Super 50, what was the point of Super 50? Yeah. If people go to this South Africa A Tour and perform significantly well, and then they don't get a call up to Australia, what was the point then? Because again, beggars can't be choosers, right? Our talent pool isn't significant enough to look at somebody score tons, and then say, you know what? Yeah, we got other players though. So what happens then?
Yeah, I think you're right. The A-team tour is essentially on paper meant to be for players on the verge, if not already in the test side. So based on that logic, if Kevlon Anderson tons up in all 3 tests against South Africa, surely a Jermaine Blackwood would hold a drop, basically. That would be the logic. So again, it's if you're a Blackwood or a Mayers, you're in a precarious position. I think obviously outstanding players who do well consistently, and at least if a player tons up in 2 tests against South Africa, I think they could likely find themselves springboarded into the test side, and I think that will just be at the risk of a Blackwood or Mayers getting dropped because they have been given a run of games and not performed well in recent times. So I think that will be the scenario. I think the bowlers, particularly the bowlers on this tour, will be looking at it because for me, that Australia tour, there's a lot of gaps. I mean, obviously, Kimar Roach will go, but we saw him. He didn't perform well last year on Australia. You've got Jaden Seals, who's obviously going to be a headline on this 18 tour. He's trying to rebuild his career after a long injury and get back into that into that test side against Australia. So for me, if you're a Jay McAllister or an Akeem Jordan, you're looking at this A-team side as exactly what you need. As in, if you perform well in the test, you will be in that test side test series in Australia, just because of the lack of options we have on the bowling front at the moment. So for me, I think as with anything in West Indies cricket, anything can happen. So anyone on this 18 tour has the opportunity of, I mean, we could see Mansingh take fifers in the first 3 tests and then find himself doing leg spin in Australia in a month's time. So for me, if I'm an 18 player on this tour and I haven't got a West Indies cap, I'll be looking at it as an opportunity to get one within the next month or so. And that can only be a good thing for us because it means the players will have the energy. They'll be motivated.
So let's talk about some people who didn't make it, not existing test players. Let's talk about people who weren't in the test squad. I've only written down 3 names in fairness. There may be some others that you've got in the back of your mind where you're wondering how comes they weren't included, right? But let's go to the big name first, Darren Bravo. Now, caveat, at the time of recording, we believe or we think that Bravo may get a call up to the West Indies ODI squad. But Santokie, if Darren Bravo doesn't get a call up to the West Indies ODI squad because they take the long-term view and they say he's 34 years old, he's not going to be around in 2027, it's unrealistic, why is he not on the A Tour? And before anyone says to me, but Mash, you can't pick him for an A Tour based on Super 50 runs. He was the second top run scorer in the first class championship earlier this year. So we already know that other than Craig Brathwaite, Darren Bravo has the most test match centuries in the region, right? So is it just Santokie that Desmond Haynes, if Darren Bravo is in test consideration, is just going to leapfrog everyone and just get straight into a test match squad? Do you get where I'm coming from, Santokie? If he's not in that ODI squad, I think there's a question to be asked here.
Yeah, I don't see Darren Bravo playing test cricket again. I just think for whatever reason, West Indies have moved on from him because I don't know if there were personal reasons, but he missed the 18 tour in Bangladesh when there were obviously people saying he should have got a call up for that. So I don't know if that was his choice or if he just didn't get a call up. So again here, I mean, a lot of people will say obviously he's 34 coming on to 35. I don't think age necessarily should be a determining factor, especially in test cricket when Test cricket is essentially almost, it's weird. It's the longest format, but there's almost a short-termism for it in terms of you pick your best players for the upcoming series. You don't think long term. I know obviously now there's a World Test Championship. That's a recent introduction to add context. But generally, you pick your best side regardless of age, or your best red ball players for whatever the next series is going to be. However, I just think from West Indies' point of view, if you're looking at his return to Test cricket since 2016, I think his highest score has been what, like 23, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he
No,
got
he
that
scored
50,
one. He scored
50 in 2019
50
against England.
Yeah, 50 and 20. So I'm just thinking that's the only logic. I think Darren Bravo should be given a chance, but my only logic can be since his return to international cricket during that hiatus between 2016 and 19, since he played across 2019 and 20, he didn't perform well. But then the counter argument will be there's been enough players in the West Indies side who haven't performed well over that period. So for me, it's trying to second guess what the selectors are thinking, but there's no one defining reason why Darren Bravo has been cast out of all international consideration. Obviously, the caveat you said is he could very well have been picked for the white ball sides against England, which would make this argument redundant. But if he hasn't been picked for anything, I'd love to know the reason.
Well, at the time of recording, the press conference with Desmond Haynes has not started. By the time most people watch this, the press conference would have finished. And I can guarantee, Santokie, that I would have asked a question about Darren Bravo regardless. So we'll see how that goes. But another name I've got on my list is Shai Hope, Santokie. Now, we know that Shai Hope is obviously the West Indies ODI captain. He's likely to be named. Obviously, he'll be in the ODI side. He's very likely, based off the back of CPL, to be named as a critical player now in the T20 side going forward. So we know why he's not on the A tour. But then here's a question, Santokie. Shai Hope doesn't have the chance, or he didn't have the chance in the first class championship to stake his claim. Went to play for Yorkshire, scored, I think, 250s maybe in England, kept wicket and all of that. Didn't really, had a middling Super 50. Obviously, World Cup sucked, everything. Does Shai Hope get into our next test squad again for his second recall, third recall, whatever it is, irrespective of what others do on this A tour? Because I think, I'll give you my answer, I think he's getting back into the test squad no matter what.
I don't know then, because then that's a straight contradiction to the Darren Bravo, because you've essentially got someone who hasn't performed or played a lot of red ball cricket getting picked, as opposed to a Darren Bravo who's put up the numbers. With Shai Hope, it's a funny one, because remember at the beginning of the year, he missed the first few games of the regional season to play in the Bangladesh Premier League. So that gave the suggestion that he was done with red ball cricket. But then he obviously played for Yorkshire in county cricket. And we know obviously once you play in county cricket, obviously it adds a certain esteem. So you'd imagine that would lead to his recall. However, he didn't play in the India series, hasn't played any red ball cricket in a long since that Yorkshire stint. So for me, I mean, I can imagine it, because Shai Hope has been managed to kind of be in and out of the sides a lot of time, but I don't see him getting into the Australia squad match. I just can't see how there'd be any valid justification for it other than a quote unquote eye test, which would have been based on performances. I mean, Shai Hope's already been given a run in the test side, so the eye test wouldn't even factor into it. So I can imagine it happening just because he has been picked, not necessarily based on form in the past, but I just don't see how they'd be able to justify it in comparison to Darren Bravo not getting picked.
The only other name I had written down, but I crossed it out. I had Brandon King written down.
Yeah.
But the reason I've crossed it out is because he's been injured. And I just don't see any realistic way he could have gone to the 18 tour. Because he didn't recover in time to play Super 50. So he's not going to recover in time to play 18 cricket in South Africa, which pretty much rules him out, therefore, of another test match squad going forward. But I guess I mentioned his name just because I'm fairly certain some people get in the comments below and say, why did you not mention Brandon King? What about him? What chance does he have? And so on and so forth. So I guess that only leaves us to say the following, Santokie. The last test match squad we had against India, off the top of my head, it was, I'm just going to go through it, and you tell me if you think these players will feature against Australia 3 months from now. Right? Craig Brathwaite.
Yeah.
Wait, who's opening with Craig Brathwaite again? Oh, Tay Shandapur.
Man said, let me infuriate the guy in his audience. Yeah. So Brathwaite, Chanderpaul, McKenzie, top 3 straight.
Right. Alec Athanaze.
Yeah.
Jermaine Blackwood.
No.
Who was number 6? Sugar, who was number 6? It must have been Mayers. I'm going to say Mayers, but I can't actually remember. Mayers.
No.
Josh Da Silva. I actually think if he doesn't score on this A tour, it wouldn't surprise me if he's dropped, you know.
But then who are you bringing in?
That's the question. Well, evidently it must be Tevin Imlach because Imlach's no, but do you know what? That's Josh. That's how I think they're gonna get Shai Hope back in the side.
Yeah, no,
I think they're gonna ask Shai Hope to wicket keep and bring him back into the squad that way, to be fair. But anyways, yeah, Josh Da Silva, yes or no?
It's a 50-50. I think it's dependent on this tour.
Jason Holder.
I mean, in theory, yes, but I don't know if he's on the sabbatical or what's going on. But yeah,
none of us know what's going on with Jason Holder, but we would assume yes.
Yeah.
Alzari Joseph.
Yeah, that's a banker. Yeah.
Kimar Roach.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Mayers wasn't in the squad against India for that. So
was he injured or he was out with something?
I can't remember why. It was Raymond Reefer.
Reefer's out. Wasn't he Reefer dropped for the second test though?
Yeah, and that's how I think Kurt McKenzie got in.
Yeah, that's how McKenzie.
So sorry, Mayers wasn't in that squad. So sorry, Raymond Reefer.
No. Reefer's the one.
Shannon Gabriel.
No, I think Seals will take Gabriel's spot.
Right. So that means just going through that. That's how you know we don't practice anything, people, that we didn't even know who was in what squad. But
what about who is the spinner then? Warwican.
Warwican. Flipping hell, Warwican. How did he get back in? Warwican.
Wait, did Joaquin Cornwall play against India though? I swear he played.
He played the first test and then he got chest infection or something.
Yeah.
Actually, we better include those two. Joaquin Cornwall.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I think if he was ruled out of the second test with a chest infection, surely he's still the incumbent spinner at this point. But you never know with West. For all we know, Visami Pamal's coming back against Australia.
This ain't even a joke. That's the thing. For all we know, do you know what? Because Multi wasn't fit, so I think Multi's coming in. But who knows? So yeah, Cornwall and Warwican.
No, I don't think Warwican will get a pick now.
Right. So based on the last test squad. This is based on Santokie's responses. We believe there are about 5 places available, whether that's for players in this A-team tour or whether that's for players like Bravo and Hope on the outside looking in, Gudakesh, Multi, etc. We believe the following players, their places are at significant risk for the Australia tour. Rakeem Cornwall, Jermaine Blackwood, Jamel Warwican, 3, Raymond Reefer, 4, Shannon Gabriel, 5. We believe those 5 are at significant risk. And I would actually throw in Josh Da Silva as well. If he does not make runs on this tour of South Africa, I could foresee a situation where they may say, you know what, Josh, we're going to try and find a replacement for you. Last point, Santokie, because we're of time. We wanted to stop this before 20 minutes. And as usual, we've gone over. Just want to quickly ask you to finish off with this point. This is the second A-team tour where Josh Da Silva is the captain. Will we see Josh Da Silva captain the West Indies at some point in the future? Will there be a... No, it's a serious question because...
So we're in the space of 3 minutes, we said man's getting dropped for Shai. But you know what? That sums up the perilous nature of West Indies cricket. But I think, all things go well for Josh Da Silva, he would be the natural heir to, being a long-term captain based on the investment they've given him as a captain for these 18 series.
Has to be, because again... Why else have you done it? Surely there must be some logical thinking behind that. They must rate his leadership in some shape or form. So my argument to Josh, if he's listening to this, is that, boy, please score some runs because they clearly rate you as a person and as a leader. You need to score the runs to justify it. Listen, Santokie, we are 2 minutes away from Desmond Haynes' press conference where we're going to hear about the ODI squad and T20 squad. So... Let's wrap this one up and I'll let you have the closing line.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to... I'm not sure what time this matches in South Africa will start tomorrow, UK time. South Africa's 2 hours ahead, so I'd imagine it'd be around 8 a.m. UK time. But as ever, follow our socials. We'll give updates, and we'll probably do a video after the first test to sort of review the performances. As ever, stay locked, and we'll be giving our reaction video to the ODI squad, which has been named in the last few minutes by Desmond Haynes. We'll probably drop that within the next 24 hours. So stay locked, people. Have a good evening and good night.
Peace.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.